Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Knitting Pickle Podcast. My name is Laura, and if you've not seen one of my videos before, I'm a knitter based in the Midlands in the UK, and I make podcasts all about knitting. And I'm also just about to launch my first ever knitting pattern. If you have seen my videos before, welcome back. As always, it's an absolute honour to have you. And let's get started. It's a special episode today. For those of you who have seen my episodes before, you may notice that I'm somewhere a little bit different. So this is technically the Knitting Pickle on vacay. I'm currently at my in-laws in Devon. We've had a mad week. My brother-in-law got married last week, and then we had another family party, and then we almost immediately came down here. So it's been very, very crazy and intense, but we are finally here. We arrived yesterday. My mother-in-law and my husband have taken the kids out for a walk so that I can sit and film this episode. And I wanted to film it as soon as possible because my Cornicette sock pattern is ready. It's taken way longer than I thought it would, but as this is my first pattern, we had a lot to kind of decide when it came to branding and colours and the kind of whole vibe of the pattern. But now we've got that template pattern in place, future patterns should be a lot quicker. But my sister sent it to me yesterday and I got a little bit emotional because I couldn't believe the moment has finally arrived, and then I got a little bit scared because the moment has finally arrived and I kind of got to do it now. But when we're uncomfortable, we grow. So yes, part of the release of the Cornicette sock pattern, I have done a giveaway in the previous episode. I did a little Q&A, kind of like a bonus episode for you, and I have drawn 2 winners. The prizes for the first winner is a copy of the Cornicette sock pattern and everything you need to make the socks. I haven't got the actual prizes with me today because I didn't really plan this, but obviously if you entered the giveaway, you've seen the prizes. So you'll get a copy of my pattern and everything you need, and that's going to be a little bit surprised because you don't really know what you're going to get, so that's always fun. And the second winner is going to win a handmade project bag made by my mum and a copy of any pattern from Hannah from Herb Garden Knitwear. And I'm going to talk about Hannah again in a little minute because she's got some exciting news as well. But those are the prizes for the giveaway. Now I'm sure if you're watching this, you're going to want to know who's won the giveaway, and I'm not going to tease you and make you wait till the end. I'm just going to get it done straight away. So if that's what you're here for, it's coming up. I did a draw from the comments this morning. I filmed it so you can see that I'm not cheating or anything, and I'll put it in a corner somewhere. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to edit this. Normally I have a nice white space for me to put my text and things into, but I don't really have that here, and this is kind of the brightest, clearest spot in the house. So we'll just kind of have to wing it, I think, for the edit. But I drew the winners this morning, and the first winner who will receive a copy of my pattern and everything you need to make the socks is Kathy Henley. Congratulations. And the second winner who will receive the project bag and a pattern from Herb Garden Knitwear is Alison Page. Well done, guys. I'm so happy for you. So I need you guys to get in contact with me. You can send me an email. My email is in the description box down below. It's laurapenroseknits@gmail.com. Or you can contact me via Instagram. If you're over there, it's probably easier via Instagram because I'm there all the time and it's easier to chat rather than sending emails. But if you're not on my Instagram, ping me an email and we will organise getting those prizes to you. I'm pretty sure that Kathy is in America. So Kathy, it might take a little while for your physical prize to get to you because Brexit and shipping and all that kind of thing. But I will get the Cornicette sock pattern over to you straight away. And Alison, I'm not sure where you are in the world, so let me know and hopefully I'll be able to organise shipping reasonably soon. Yeah, it's all a bit crazy at the moment with Brexit and you know what. So there you go. Those are the winners of the giveaway. Congratulations. I can't believe it's happened. Woo! Editing Laura here. I completely forgot to mention that to say thank you to all of my subscribers, not just the competition winners, to say thank you for all the support so far. I'm offering you guys 30% off the Cornicette sock pattern for the first week that this video is live. All you have to do is go over to Ravelry where the pattern is live and enter the code thank you YouTube, and you can get 30% off the Cornicette sock pattern for the first week. If you can't use Ravelry, then please send me an email and I'll see if I can get to the pattern to you in another way. I'm going to try and get it up on Lovecrafts as an alternative to Ravelry, but I've not used that site before other than to buy yarn, so I don't really know how it's going to work, so that might be slightly delayed. But in the meantime, you can go and get it on Ravelry and use discount code thank you YouTube for 30% off. Thanks, bye! So, I have got a few things to show you today. I've actually been working on quite a lot of things, but I haven't brought all my finished objects and things with me because I didn't think I'd be filming this week. But I have got enough with me to show you for a podcast worth, and to be honest, because it's been a little while since I've done a proper podcast, I've probably amassed too much and we'd end up with like a 2-hour podcast. So I'll do this one and maybe I'll do another one in a week's time with everything else I've been working on, and then we'll be kind of back to our normal schedule. But I'm going to jump straight into what I'm wearing because I am boiling hot. You will not have seen this before unless you follow me on Instagram, but you have seen the yarn before. In my previous episode I showed you some yarn that I was ever so kindly gifted by knityarns.co.uk, and it was the Folklana Peruvian Highland wool and Telia, both in the shade Green Tea 355. And I wasn't sure what I was going to make with it, and I'd found this pattern, which is the Mary cardigan by Trico Alice Hammer, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to make it or not. And then after I filmed the podcast, I bought my dress for my brother-in-law's wedding, and it's kind of like a yellowy greeny colour. I'm not sure if I'll have pictures of me in it at the wedding, but when I edit this, I know the photographer who did the wedding, I know she's got some nice pictures, so I might message her and see if she can ping them over to me. But I will do some cutaways of me wearing it properly. And I just thought the yarn was perfectly matching the dress, and I wanted a cardigan that I could like just pop over my shoulders when it got a bit chillier in the evening. So I thought, I'm just going to do the cardigan Mary. I've got 2 weeks to do it in, should be enough time. And I managed to do it in about 5 days. It's a bottom-up construction, so I started with the sleeves, and it took me, I found it quite difficult to get gauge on this one. Firstly, because in the pattern it gives you a gauge unblocked and a gauge blocked, and I didn't realise this, so I was trying to get the unblocked gauge with my blocked swatches, and it wasn't quite right, and I ended up going up a whole needle size, which is quite a lot for me. I'm usually pretty bang on when it comes to gauge. I might have to go down a little bit sometimes, but I've never had to go up before. And even then, I still didn't quite get gauge. I was just a little, I think I was like half a stitch wide, but I decided to just give it a go anyway. And if it was a little bit too big, that's fine, because I wanted kind of like a big loose fit anyway. I didn't want anything tight. So I've ended up with a cardigan that I absolutely love, but isn't quite true to the pattern, because the pattern says it is Aran weight, whereas this is definitely more of a bulky weight. I used 5.5mm needles, and the pattern recommends 4.5, I think, not sure. So yeah, it's not quite true to the original pattern, but I still think it's absolutely beautiful. It's got lace work here, you might be able to see, and nups all over. The original pattern, the whole cardigan, is in reverse stockinette stitch, so it's the back. So this, how I've done it in normal stockinette stitch, but the pattern would usually be in the back. But I just couldn't get my mind past it looking inside out. So I had a little look on all the different Ravelry projects, and I found one other project that had done it with the right side of stockinette stitch facing. So I was a little bit worried that at the join where this reverse stockinette stops and it becomes a normal stockinette, it might look a bit odd. But someone had done one in a beautiful kind of rusty brown colour, and it looked really good. So I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stick with my instinct and go with the normal stockinette. And yeah, I don't think I changed anything else in the pattern. The pattern is originally French, and the English translation, it's not 100% there. And again, I had a look on Ravelry for anybody else who'd done the English version, and I found one of the project who had done the XL size, and they'd mentioned that the chart wasn't quite right and some of the translations was a bit odd. And in most cases it was easy to figure out what they meant, but at the very end doing the short rows to shape the neck because it's bottom up. You do the sleeves, you do the bottom, you join it all, and then you work the yoke. It's worked flat as well, by the way. I did consider steeking it, but because I was on a time constraint, I didn't want to risk mucking it up. And it worked out quite well in the end, because by the time I finished this project, my purling speed matched my knit speed. So that was good. So now I can't really give myself an excuse to not work things flat, because I can purl as fast as I can knit. Still prefer it in the round. And if I was to do this again, I would do it in the round fully and steek it, even though that's not what's suggested in the pattern. Anyway, to the short rows. The English translation of the short rows didn't make any sense at all, and I had to kind of try and figure it out based on what it said and through my knowledge of short rows, and I pretty much made it work. And in the end, you can't really tell anyway, because you kind of, no one will look at that and think, not done those short rows quite right, has she? That wouldn't happen. So it's fine, and it worked out in the end. I definitely struggled towards the end of this, and I think that's because I put a tight time limit on myself. Even though I had 2 weeks to do it, I wanted to get it done and out of the way in case it didn't work or it didn't look right, so I had time to find something alternative. And that time pressure did suck a little bit of the joy out of it. So if I was to knit it again, which I probably would, because it's so gorgeous and I've worn it pretty much every day since the wedding, I would definitely take my time and enjoy the process a little bit more. And I think that's all there is to say. Oh, my buttons. I realised last time I podcast, when I was showing you my Maya cardigan, that I bought buttons off eBay without really thinking about it, just searched, clicked, bought. And I thought, hang on a minute, I missed an opportunity here. I could have, if I thought ahead a little bit more, I could have, done some research, found an independent seller, looked on Etsy and found some really special buttons. So I did that this time. I went onto Etsy and I bought these buttons from a shop called The Button Shed. They're also on Instagram, so I'll link them below. And they are these beautiful pearl effect buttons. They're nice and big, and the back of them kind of has a brown stripe to it, which you could also have facing out, but I decided I just wanted the kind of plain pearl ones. And actually, that is something that I would change if I did this again. And also another way I changed it, the original length is a lot longer. I think it's meant to come down to about here, but because I was wearing it over a dress and I wear high-waisted jeans, I decided to crop it by, I think, 3 inches. So it's not fully cropped, but it's definitely shorter than described in the pattern. And in the pattern, it tells you to do 5 buttonholes. And I've done 5 buttonholes on this length, and I think it needs more. This kind of happens, and it annoys me a little bit because it fits me perfectly fine. So you wouldn't normally expect this kind of thing. So what I think I might do is just sew on some little poppers so that I can press these bits shut when I'm wearing it completely closed. I have been mainly wearing it either open or just with the top button up, which is fine, but I would like to wear it closed as well. So that's another thing I say about this pattern, is I would add more buttons than is recommended. But again, that might be more to do with my yarn choice and the fact that I've got quite a heavy garment. So yeah, that's my Mary cardigan. I'm going to take it off now because I'm literally about to melt. Here we go, I popped it up there so you can see it. Right, I don't have my other finished object with me, but I will talk about it now because I've got pictures of it and I've got footage of it as well. When I finished my cardigan Mary, I decided I wanted to make a cardigan for my daughter for her little wedding outfit. My mum made her the most stunning dress. I'll insert pictures. And I wanted to make a little matching red cardigan. So I made a cardigan for Penny a while ago. I think it was in episode 2. It was just a really plain, it was quite a wide neck mohair steeped cardigan. Really simple, circular yoke. It had I-cord cuffs, and it was just something that I kind of made up as I went along. And I thought I'm going to have a go at that pattern again because I would like to develop that a little bit more. So this time I did a small picot neck, and it was a neck that went all the way up to the top. And I increased quite quickly around the yoke because I wanted like a poofy, loose look rather than like a tight cardigan look. I wanted it to be loose because I wanted it to have movement and I wanted to be able to play with it. And I also wanted poofy sleeves. So those extra increases at the yoke gave me more fabric in the sleeves. And I did a bolero length because she had her dress was kind of like it came up from the waist and poofed a little bit, so I wanted the cardigan to sit in line with that so it didn't interfere with the dress. And I had a picot hem along the bottom and picot cuffs and these little balloon sleeves that were so adorable. And actually in the end she didn't even wear it on the day of the wedding. She was too busy running around, and even though it rained for quite a lot of the day, it was still very warm, so she just didn't wear it in the end. But 2 days after the wedding, we had another family party and she wore it to that. So I took some footage of her running about in the garden wearing it. So I'll insert that here. And after I posted it on Instagram, quite a few people say they'd be interested in the pattern and interested in testing it. So I think I might have a go at writing that one down because it's a pretty simple cardigan, but there's lots of scope to change it. You can have a straight hems, you can have picot hems, you can have different lengths. So I think I might give that a go. So let me know in the comments if you fancy the pattern for that cardigan. And by the way, the yarn that I used for my daughter's cardigan is the Filcolana Pernilla in Chinese red. And it's very, very red. It was a little bit redder than I kind of anticipated. It reminded me of like school jumper red. I don't know if that's because my primary school we wore red, so that's just what I think of. But it's very, very red. And I've washed it twice and it's still leaking colour. So that might be something to look out for on those yarns, but it could just be the fact that it's so red. But I chose the Pernilla because it's made from the same wool that the Peruvian Highland wool by Filcolana is made from. And I absolutely love that yarn. I don't think I would have chosen it if it hadn't have been sent to me by Simona from Knit Yarns. So I'm really glad I got to try it. And the wool that the Pernilla makes, it's not the wool that it makes, the fabric that the Pernilla makes, it's not too rustic. It's still soft, but it's not like shiny soft like merino would be or something like that. So my daughter was fine wearing it, and I think I'd recommend it. I've got quite a lot of it left because I definitely over ordered, and I think it might be really nice for some colour work. And as it's so red, I might do a colour work jumper for my daughter for Christmas. Watch this space. And speaking of cardigans, I did also try and make my son a cardigan in time for the wedding. I don't know what I was thinking because I'd already done 2 cardigans in 10 days. And he is a size 4, size 5 age. So it's not a small garment. Like Penny's garment was tiny. She's 2 years old, but she's quite small for her age. So it was a teeny little garment that I only took 2 days to make. So I didn't finish my son's in time. I haven't brought it with me. I was using some Stash acrylic yarn because it's what I had to hand. And I wasn't really enjoying the fabric that it was making. So that's probably going to be one that might never get finished. Probably not. It's also something that I probably wouldn't normally dress my son in. It's like quite a preppy V-neck cardigan, and he's like quite a casual dresser, so I'm not sure it's something he would wear in real life. So maybe I'll finish it, maybe I won't, who knows, probably not. So before we move on to whips, I just wanted to let you know one thing. I mentioned earlier that one of my prizes is a pattern from Hannah from Herb Garden Knitwear, and you may have heard me talk about her before because I was the test knitter for her Seaborn tee. I've talked about this a lot in previous episodes, so I don't need to give you any more information now. Sorry about that, my father-in-law came into the kitchen. I don't think he quite realised what I was doing, so I just had to pause for a minute. Anyway, as I was saying, the Seaborn tee is now available, and I'm so excited for Hannah because it's such a beautiful pattern. And the last time I spoke to her, she said she's made back the cost of creating the pattern, which hasn't happened before, and I'm so happy for her because honestly I've never seen a pattern so detailed and helpful and thorough. Her patterns are just incredible. So there you go. If you haven't yet downloaded the Seaborn tee pattern, I highly recommend you do. I know there was a lot of interest about it in the comments. Inga from Knitting Traditions has just finished one as well. She got in on the test last minute, and she's done one. It's white, but it's got like a yellowy stripe to it. Absolutely gorgeous. So go and check out Inga's as well. You've probably already seen it because who hasn't? So that's a Seaborn tee release. Let's move on. Whips. Oh no, I do have one more finished object actually. I have finally finished my Lynton Socks. I've mentioned these before, and I had finished a whole sock, this one, but on the way down here I finally finished the second sock. This is the John Arbon Exmoor sock yarn, and I bought 4 skeins of it and wasn't really sure what to do with it, and ended up just creating this sock pattern. And the little zigzags reminded me of the roofs in Lynton, which is a village town in Devon where my in-laws used to live, and it's also where the John Arbon shop is, and I thought it was a perfect name. So these are all finished, I just need to put the pattern together. So there may well be a test call for these pretty soon. I think I would like to knit one more pair before I do call for the test knit, because these are for my husband, so they don't really fit me, and I'd quite like to be able to just double check the pattern, because it's a little bit different to the Cornicette socks. It's a 6 stitch repeat, so the sizing is slightly different, so I can't just kind of like cut and paste from the Cornicette sock pattern, so I just want to triple check before I go to testing with these. But on the subject of socks, I do have a new sock project for you, and it's an idea that was kind of knocking around in my head for a little while, and then I was mucking about on my knitting chart app, and I started kind of drawing it, and I thought, oh, actually this might work. So in the car yesterday on the way down to Devon, I cast on a new pair of socks, and I finished them last night. They're only shorty. I haven't finished the whole pair, I've finished one sock, and it's just a shorty, so it didn't really take very long. And here it is. So a half finished object, technically a whip. It's a really simple colour work sock. It's 3 colours, but you only work 2 colours at a time, so it's only 2 strand colour work, not 3. And it's just really simple, kind of in a similar vein of the Cornicette socks, and it's a 4 stitch pattern as well, so the pattern for these will be quite similar to the Cornicette socks. However, the heel method is going to have to be different. So I did an afterthought heel for these, and I came into a bit of trouble. If you've seen the afterthought heel method before, you kind of choose the row where you want your heel to be, you pick up stitches underneath, you pick up stitches along the top. I have made a tutorial on this which will go live when the Cornicette sock pattern goes live, so you can have a little look at that if you like. But because of the nature of this colour work, the 1 by 1, so you knit a stitch in one colour, knit a stitch in the other colour, blah blah blah, when I picked up the stitches above the afterthought line, it was fine, and it actually looks really nice because you kind of get this, you can see where the blue there, it's got the pattern continues into the heel. But on the underneath, when I picked up the stitches, something went ever so wrong, and when I started knitting the heel, I had holes every other stitch. So I then had to go back a row and pick up the stitches again from a row of solid colour rather than the 1 by 1, and it still isn't quite right. So I don't think that technique works for this sock, but I do think that it's like, I can't remember what it's called, I think it's called a peasant's heel. It's basically an afterthought heel, but you knit a piece of scrap yarn into your work as you go. So I'll be able to pick up the stitches above here, but then having the scrap yarn in underneath should make the picking up process underneath that easier, so I should get a nice smooth transition from the colour work to the heel. I mean, it's absolutely fine. It's on the bottom of the foot, so you can't see it, so it doesn't really matter. But if I can make it perfect, I will. This yarn is a new yarn to me, and it is the Cloudborn twist sock, Highland twist sock, something like that. I saw it on Woolly Witchcraft podcast. Brogan had recently bought some. I don't think she tried it yet, but I saw it and I thought, oh, that looks like an interesting sock yarn. And then I got an email from Lovecraft saying 50% off Cloudborn yarn. So I was like, hell yes. So normally for a 50 gram skein, I think it's only about £4 or £5. It's not extortionately expensive in the first place. The John Arbon can be anything from £7 to £9 for a 50 gram skein. Whereas this in sale was, I think it was about £2.50 a skein. Bargain. And last time I checked, and at the time of recording this, it is still in the sale on Lovecraft's. So I picked up 3 different colours. I chose some colours that I don't normally use. Well, I chose one colour I don't normally use. You've seen me use a lot of white and a lot of yellow. I love yellow. But I also picked up this bright blue. To be honest, I thought it would be more of a teal colour, but it's definitely a blue rather than a teal. But I think they look really cool. It's a classic combination, and it reminds me of a dear friend of mine. You know who you are. So yeah, and so far my experience with the Cloudborn sock yarn has been really good. It feels nice and smooth. It is 80% superwash, haven't got the labels, I'll put it in the text. It's 80% superwash wool and 20% polyamide, I think. So yeah, classic sock yarn, but just a bit different, and I really enjoyed using a different yarn. I've definitely got stuck in a bit of a yarn rut. I've been knitting with a lot of Phil Kalani yarn, but that's mainly because I really love it. I think it's excellent quality yarn. It's really reasonably priced, so it's kind of like my go-to. But I am ready to kind of push the boundaries a little bit more now. So that's my latest sock pattern. It does have a name, but I'm going to keep it a secret until I have finished a pair, because this isn't what they're going to look like. Finally, I have cast on again, and you can already see that they're a little bit different. I did a tubular cast on here and it didn't really work. It's too stretchy. It's a bit, I haven't blocked these yet, but I know that these will grow when I block them. And it's a little bit loose on the foot. What I probably should have done is done the tubular cast on but gone down a needle size. But also, even though it's a shorty sock, it's a little bit too short. This kind of doesn't sit quite high enough on the back of the foot, and when you're wearing trainers, that bit of your trainer that can sometimes rub on the back of your ankle, you want a bit of sock between your ankle and there, and this was just underneath that point. And I also wasn't really feeling the white cuff. Something about it just wasn't really sitting right. So I've cast on again, and this time I've done my go-to Old Norwegian or Twisted German cast on, which is what I usually use, and I don't know why I decided to differ from it because I love it. And I've made the rib slightly longer. This one was 6 rows and this one was 8 rows, so it's only 2 rows difference, but I think it does make a good difference. And I've done it in yellow rather than the white, and I already like it a lot more. And then the colour of the toe and the colour of the heel kind of depends on how long you want your foot length to be, really. And mine just so ended up being yellow and blue, so I don't know if this heel and toe will be the same as this, but you know, that's part of the fun. You can do whatever coloured toe and heel you like. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far. The 1x1 colour work is usually one of the trickier colour works to get an even tension on, because the 1x1 can come out quite tight. So I've started to do a different technique with this sock. With the one I finished, I had a yarn strand in each hand and knit continental with one colour, knit English with another colour. But this time round, I've been working these holding both the yarn strands continentally. So both the different strands go over my finger and I pick whichever one I need from the 2 strands. I decided to do this for 2 reasons. One, I was a little bit bored of my normal technique, and secondly, it is one of the ways that you can hold your yarn when doing 3 colour stranded colour work. So I could have 2 over my left hand and 1 over my right hand, and I really want to have a go at 3 stranded colour work, because I kind of had a go at it before when I didn't really know what on earth I was doing, and it all went really wrong. But there are so many patterns that I really love that involve 3 strands. So I thought I might as well practice the technique whilst I'm just on a little sock. And so far my tension looks all right. There are lines of just solid colour, so if you've got a tight gauge for the 1x1 and then your normal gauge for the strand, for the single line of colour, it can give you a bit of a wobbly sock. But so far we seem to be quite even. I should probably tell you the colours of these socks, the colours of these yarns. The white is Ecru, the yellow is Maize Heather, and the blue is Lagoon. Everything will be linked below, of course, as usual, in the show notes. But if you don't have access to the show notes, that's what they're called. So, moving on from socks, I have got one more whip to show you and one acquisition, and then we will have a little bit of nitty chat. So my other main whip you have seen before, and I haven't got a huge amount to talk about because I've mainly just been working on the body, but I do have some notes on the yarn. And it is my Magnolia Bloom. I showed you this in my last episode, but I had only done the yoke. This is going to be a birthday present for my sister. It's her birthday at the very end of August, so I've still got a little bit of time. But it's been quite difficult to work on this because it's been really hot, and this is 100% wool. It's the Drops Alaska, which is, yeah, 100% wool, held with the Drops Kid Silk. So this combination together makes a very warm, thick fabric, and when it's really hot, it's not the most comfortable to work on. So I've been working on it when we're in the car, if my husband's driving and we've got the aircon on, and sometimes in the evening, and I'm just about to cast off the bottom. I'm a little bit worried that it might be a bit short. I know it's the right length for me, though thinking about it, my sister's shorter than me. So if it's the right length for me, then it's definitely going to be the right length for her, if not a little bit longer, and I'd rather it be too long than too short. So yeah, I'm about to cast off, and I've been putting it off because I can't not do the Italian rib bind off now. I just can't not do it. It's so gorgeous. I did it on the collar and the button band of my cardigan, and it just gives the most beautiful finish. Like, you can't even tell that there's a bind off there. And there's quite a lot of stitches to do that too, so I need to do that when the kids aren't around and I can fully commit. The yarn I just wanted to have a quick chat about. I really, really like it. I was a little bit annoyed at first that it only comes in 50 gram balls, because when you're doing like an Aran weight jumper, I can't really think of that many Aran weight projects that you'd only need a small amount of yarn for. I guess maybe a hat, but yeah, at first I was a bit annoyed that I had to buy, I think, like 9 balls of this, maybe less, I can't really remember. But I was like, that's going to be loads of ends to weave in every time I have to add on a new ball, and I hate having to add a new ball of yarn like mid-body, because even if you weave it in really neatly, you can still kind of see it. However, this stuff spit splices beautifully. If you're not aware of what spit splicing is, it is a little bit gross. Oh, you might find it gross. I don't find it gross. But it's basically, you take the end of your old ball and the end of your new ball, and some people kind of separate the strands, but I don't feel you need to with this. And you lay them over each other and you wet it, so either pop it in your mouth, dip it in your tea, or just get some water, and then you put the two ends into your palm and you rub it really viciously. You can feel it really, really, really warm, and it felts it. And this only works for 100% animal fibres. I do it with mohair as well, and obviously that's got silk in it, and that's not plant fibre. But you can kind of put 2 strands of mohair together and knit it in, and you can't really see it in the work anyway, because it's such a fine weight, especially when it's held with another thing. But this particularly, you spit splice it together and you can pull and pull and pull on it, and it just doesn't come apart. So I know that all those joins are going to be safe and aren't going to fall apart, and probably it's even safer than if I was to tie them together and then weave in the ends. So that's a really good point of this yarn. And obviously the price point is really, really good. Something else I've done is I've taken a slightly lighter grey. This is colour 03, and this is colour, it's not going to tell me, is it? Oh no, here it is. This is colour 10. So usually with Drops, same with Filcolana, they'll have a shade that's across all their different yarns. Like in this one, this is 2 different wools, but both the same shade. These are 2 different shades. The grey is slightly lighter and the mohair is slightly darker. And what that gives is a really subtle marled effect. And when it comes to greys, I particularly like grey when it's marled. I prefer it when it's got that kind of difference in colour and isn't just a flat colour. And I'll do a close-up for you, of course, but you can just kind of see you get this kind of variation in colour that's just a little bit more interesting, I think, than just flat grey. So that's a nice little tip for you if you're ever doing anything with a mohair and a normal yarn and you just want to kind of jazz up your flat colour a little bit. Choose a mohair that's slightly darker. The mohair and Highland wool for this, even though they're the same shade, the mohair, the silk strand is quite a bit lighter. So you don't really get a mould effect with this, but you can see the white strands of the mohair popping out here and there. And I don't mind it. It's not my favourite, but I don't mind it. So I wouldn't really suggest going for a lighter mohair than your colour. I'd go for the darker mohair and the lighter other strand. So there you go, that's my Magnolia Bloom by Camilla Vlad. Forgot to say the designer. Whoops. I said the designer for that one, didn't I? I'm a little bit all over the shop. It's been a while. I'm getting quite hot. I'm in a strange space. I feel like we're going to be interrupted any minute. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit now. So that's where I am at with the Magnolia Bloom. Hopefully by the next time I podcast it will be done and it will probably be gifted. Fingers crossed. So finally onto my, I've actually had 2 acquisitions and one of them is very, very special and I haven't brought it with me and I don't want to talk about it until I can show you because it's quite possibly one of the most special yarn acquisitions I've ever received in my life. So I will leave that teaser with you and leave that for the next one. But whilst I was ordering my Cloudborne sock yarn, as it was 50% off, I thought, well, I'll have a little look at what else is there. And I picked up the alpaca fingering. Now, again, on the website, this looked a little bit lighter in colour and my original plan was to pair it with my leftover mohair from my Mary cardigan and make a little cardigan for my daughter. Maybe to kind of match the Mary, maybe with some nuts or something and some lace work, just so it's kind of a bit similar. But it's quite a bit darker than the mohair. And as I just said, the kind of white strand on the darker strand, I'm not so keen on. However, I now have a use for this. It is 100% alpaca yarn, fingering weight 201 yards per 50 grams. And I've got 3 skeins of it. And I have just been accepted on another test knit. These tend to kind of creep out of nowhere for me. I don't really plan them, but sometimes a pattern will pop up on my Instagram feed and I'm like, oh yes, that's a bit of me. So if it's a test knit, I'll put my name in the ring. And this test knit was, I saw it on Sophie from the Knit Pearl Girl, designer of the Aosta sweater. I saw it on her stories and it's a hat pattern by Rust Knitwear. I was already following Rust Knitwear. I absolutely love her stuff. And this will tangent quite nicely into my small designer of the week, is Rust Knitwear. She is from Switzerland and I think she's got about 15 patterns on Ravelry. She's got quite a high Instagram following actually, but the number of patterns is still quite low. She's only got 15, so I'd consider her quite a small designer still. You may have seen her, I think it's called the Lines sweater, and it's like a basic sweater, but it's got kind of like chevron lines going all the way down the body, all the way down the arms. Absolutely stunning, you might have seen that. But she had just done a test call for the Erna beanie, E-R-N-A beanie. And I saw it and I was just like, hells yes. It's broken rib, which is one of my favourite stitches, and I've got a few projects actually that I'd like to do in broken rib. My Friday slipover by Petite Knit was broken rib, but that was quite a taxing project for me. I think it's episode 2 or episode 3 I talk about it, but I kind of like had my fill of broken rib after that project, but I absolutely love the way it looks. And the Erna beanie is pretty much all broken rib. It's got a really thick rim and it comes in a child size, a women's size and a men's size, which I thought was really cool because my 4-year-old loves hats and he's got a big head. So he'll be pretty good for the kid size. I think I'm doing the kid size. She didn't confirm which size I'll be doing, but I did also offer to do the men's size because it's my dad's birthday in September, and it's his birthday just after the deadline, so I thought that could work out pretty nicely. So I don't know which size she wants me to do, but I've got a feeling I'll be knitting one for my son and for my dad and maybe for me. I think the original pattern is using Filcoline Arvetta. You know how much I love that, and I'm just waiting to hear from her as to whether I can use a different yarn, obviously as long as I get gauged. But if I have to use the Arvetta, that doesn't matter. My son wants a orange one, but if I can use this yarn I will, because it's 100% alpaca, so it's so soft and I feel like it would just be so lovely on the head. and I think in the pattern it's held double, so I should have enough here. So hopefully that's what this will be. She's supposed to be sending the patterns out on Wednesday, and to be honest, once I receive the pattern, I will probably work pretty much exclusively on it. I'm going to do my best to get my Magnolia Bloom done, as much of it as I can do before, well, hang on, Wednesday's tomorrow. So I could probably bosh a sleeve out between now and then. But if you have been following me for a little while, you know that I'm quite a quick knitter, and I could do a sweater in 5 days if I put my mind to it. So even if I don't touch my sister's jumper until 3 days before her birthday, should be fine. So yes, I'll probably work exclusively on the hat when I get the pattern, because when I do a test knit, I like to be quick. I like to be thorough. When I did my Cornicette sock pattern, one of my test knitters completed her first sock on the day that I released the pattern, and oh my god, I was just, as from the designer side, I was just so excited and so thrilled to see it. So when I'm in testing mode, I like to be able to do that for the designers that have put their trust and faith in me to test their pattern. So that is your small designer of the week. Let's move into the nitty chat. If you have been with me before, you know that I like to talk about what has been a knitting, can't even say my own phrase, what has been tickling my knitting pickle this week. And funnily enough, my pickle got tickled this morning. I was watching I've had to write it down because it's a new podcast to me. I was watching the Knit and Spin with Brie, who is Doodlebug Yarn Company. She does spinning and dyeing, and she sells her yarn, and she's also just started a knitting podcast. There's only 3 episodes out, and I just started watching it this morning. But at the beginning of her 3rd episode, she says, "Hi, my name's Brie, and my second language is knitting." And it made me howl. I laughed so much because it's funny, because it's true. And I was like, you're one of my people. We are one of the same, because I know exactly what she means by knitting is my second language. And we've got my message just saying, I loved that moment in your podcast. It really made me laugh. And she made the point that learning to read knitting patterns is like learning another language, and it instantly took me straight back to when I first tried to read a knitting pattern. I happened to be at my in-laws' house at the time. It was around New Year actually, and I was just looking at these knitting patterns, and I didn't understand a word that they said, and it felt like a whole other language. So that's what's tickled my knitting pickle this week. If knitting is your second language, let me know down below. If you have an actual second language, props to you. That's something I would really, really like to do in my life, is learn another language. I'm quite good at speaking other languages phonetically. We've got family friends in Germany, and whenever I go over there and say the German words I know, they always say, "Oh, you've got a great accent." But I can't read it, and I can't understand it when it's spoken to me. I can just say the sounds. So learning another language is something I would really like. Though I do feel a little bit better about myself now I know that knitting is my second language. So that's a cheeky little recommendation for you there. I have another podcast which I would like to let you guys know about. And I've been waiting to let you know about this one because it links really nicely with my Cornicette socks. And this podcast is called the So Homey Podcast, and it's by the lovely Abby. Abby was one of my test knitters for the Cornicette socks, and she either hadn't done socks or she hadn't done colour work. I think she hadn't done colour work, because watching her podcast she's done quite a few socks, but she's pretty new to socks. And she messaged me saying, "I'd really, really like to do it. Can I do the shorty version?" But all the places had gone for the shorty versions. But I said to her, I have got some of the long leg ones if you want to give that a go. And I was really unsure at first as to whether I should take on any testers who hadn't done colour work before. Because obviously getting your colour work tension takes a lot of practice. But doing that in the sense of a sock can also be quite difficult, because tension is super important in a sock. But I thought, you know what, I want to make sure that my pattern is accessible to everyone. I want to know that people who have never knit socks or who have never done colour work before can read the pattern and understand it. And I'm really, really glad I took Abby on. And she wasn't the only, I had another tester who was new to colour work, and they got on quite well with it too. And she's done the most beautiful pair of kind of purple and white long leg cornicettes. And she speaks about them in her podcast. And it was really surreal at first to hear her talking about it, but also super, super nice to hear someone talking about them like in the flesh, in real life. Obviously I've been talking to my testers and getting feedback and stuff, but she didn't have to post about it in her podcast. I didn't ask her to. It wasn't like part of the test note or anything, so it was really nice to hear. But enough about the Cornicette. She has also been talking about, I think it's not in her most recent podcast, I think it was the one before, she also does crochet, and I don't dislike crochet, but it just doesn't appeal to my brain in the same way knitting does. I've crocheted a baby blanket before, and I love the finished object, and the process of it was quite therapeutic, but I've just found it a bit boring, if I'm honest, just doing the same thing over and over again to make a square. I think the thing that I love about knitting the most is the construction and the garments and the difficult bits of constructing a garment. And I know you can crochet garments as well, but I find the crochet fabric can be a little bit heavy for garments unless it's like outerwear. My mum is just about to crochet like a big thick jacket, so I'll be really interested to see what that's like. However, Abby was talking about, she also writes patterns, by the way. She's a pattern designer herself, and she's working on a blanket. It was a grey blanket, and instead of kind of working back and forth like you would, she goes across, breaks the yarn, across, breaks the yarn, and the fabric that it makes, on one side it looks like knitted rib, and on the other side it's a different texture, but I hadn't ever seen any crochet like that before, and I thought it was so interesting. And I love that you've got the yarns at the end that you can turn into tassels. And as far as I'm aware, she's still working on that pattern, but it's the first time I've seen a crochet pattern and thought, should I give this a go? So Abby, if you're watching this and you need a tester, a new to crochet newbie tester for your blanket, please consider me. So that's the other podcast I wanted to mention today. And I do have one other little bit of podcast admin, though it's not podcast admin. I'd like to say a little thank you. So recently, the lovely Jules from the So Sweet Violet podcast gave me a little mention at the end of one of her episodes. She has got a really big podcast. She has got an online shop full of beautiful things, stitch markers, accessories. She does knitting patterns as well. Does she sell yarn? I'm not sure if she's, no, I don't think she does yarn. But she has been running her own business in the yarny crafting world for ages. So to hear her recommend my podcast was like, it was an honour, and I've now gone back and watched loads of her episodes. I can't believe I hadn't heard of her before, because she's big, you know, she's got 10k, she's like established in the knitting podcast world. So I've been watching back over her episodes, and she's a pleasure to watch. It's really like knitting with a friend, and she very much reminds me as well of Cherie from the Ollie and Bella podcast. You must, if you haven't seen the Ollie and Bella podcast, where have you been? But that's another one to recommend for you there. But they've both got this kind of warm, relaxed, kind of cuddly vibe to them, where you really do feel like you're sitting with a friend. So thank you to Jules for the shout out, and I would also like to send my little meagre following over in case you haven't seen her podcast before. She's been having a bit of a difficult time at the moment with her health, and it's good to know that she can still use craft to get her through those difficult times. And if we can send her some love and support through watching her podcast or visiting her shop or leaving her a comment, I think that would be really nice. So I think that brings us to the end of this slightly strange podcast on holiday. I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I would be really honoured if you left me a little comment below. On the previous episode when I did the giveaway, not being able to respond to your comments was so hard. Like honestly, I thought you'd just like leave a little token comment so that you're entered into the giveaway, but so many people wrote so many lovely messages, and I couldn't reply to them. Though now I've done the comment picker, the website that I used, I did notice that there is a toggle that says don't include replies. So I think I actually could have replied to you and still it not affected the giveaway. So next time I do a giveaway, I should be able to respond to you all. But thank you for all your wonderful comments on the giveaway video. I've never done a Q&A before. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I got some really good feedback from it and I really enjoyed making it. So who knows, I might do another one in the future. On that note, before I go, I've got one more thing I just wanted to quickly talk about. I mentioned it in my last video that I was going to do an episode for the Knit Slips Crafting and Mental Health series. Since then I have filmed it and it has been published, and I'm going to cry if I talk about it too much. It was a really difficult thing for me to do, and it took me quite a few attempts to actually film it without crying. But in it I talk about my struggles with mental health. I have struggled with body image and eating disorders for most of my adult life, and in the past year I've managed to finally break free of that. You see, I'm already going. But I've struggled to talk about it, if I'm honest. I've struggled to say it out loud. Like, I still struggle to say the words, even to family sometimes. So sitting down and saying it all out loud on camera to share with the world was surreal and strange, but oh my God, it was therapeutic. I've been struggling a little bit recently with summer. There's even more pressure to look a certain way. And the thoughts were kind of coming back into my mind every now and then. I was able to fight them off and shut them down, but I was having to battle it a bit more than usual. And it was getting difficult. So reliving everything I went through out loud, it just made me remember how unhappy I was. So thank you to Tom for giving me that safe space to do that. And thank you to everybody who had contributed to the series before, because watching other people talk about their mental health struggles, even though they might not be the same as mine, it just creates this safe space where this subject that should not be taboo can be talked about. And it's been amazing for me to take part in that series. And so many of you have gone over and watched it and comments, and I've had quite a few personal messages on Instagram saying thank you for my episode, and that they understand how I feel and that I'm not alone. And if you've had any kind of mental health struggle, specifically or particularly with anxiety, it can be so isolating and you feel like you're the only person in the world going through it. So to know that I'm not, it's always helpful. Even a year into recovery, it's still helpful to know that I'm not on my own. So thank you to everyone who has gone over and watched that. And if you haven't watched it, I'd be super, super honoured if you did. I will link it below. And on that note, before I cry, I'm going to sign off and say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.